If you're pregnant, you've probably heard all about the dreaded glucose tolerance test for gestational diabetes. So let's talk a little bit about what gestational diabetes is and why we want to manage it. Gestational diabetes is a form of diabetes that is first found in pregnancy and usually occurs because of changes in how we metabolize and process carbohydrates. To understand what is going on in our body, let's go back to high school biology. So, when you eat a carbohydrate-based meal or food, your body breaks down the carbohydrate into its simple units, like for example glucose. Once glucose is released into the bloodstream, it stimulates several hormones and one in particular, insulin, which is released from the pancreas. The role of insulin is to take the existing blood glucose and move it into where it's either used or stored. So for example, the liver, muscle, or even in storage as fat. Think of insulin being like the key that opens the door to let glucose out of the bloodstream and into where it needs to be. So diabetes is either when your body doesn't make enough insulin or the insulin that is being released isn't as effective or being used effectively. Now in pregnancy there is a change in how carbohydrates and fats as well are being metabolized. Late pregnancy is often referred to as the catabolic state, which is a state where things are usually broken down, and this allows energy and nutrients to be readily available to be passed on to your growing baby. This is why you are typically referred for your glucose tolerance test somewhere between 24 to 28 weeks. Unless you are at increased risk of developing gestational diabetes, and in that case you'll be sent for an early glucose tolerance test. Now, whether or not you do an early test will depend often in the area that you live in, but what is often referred to as higher risk for developing diabetes could be factors such as your ethnicity, your age, family history, any health conditions that you have, medication that you take, and also your weight prior to and early in your pregnancy. So if you are diagnosed with gestational diabetes, it may not always be within your control. But the good news is that there is a lot that you can do to control your blood glucose levels. So why is it that we need to worry about controlling your blood sugars? Well, we know that the risk of not managing it well increases for both mum and baby. We know that effective blood glucose level management in the ranges that you are provided can reduce your risks as mum for things like a cesarean section. It can also reduce the risk of preterm delivery and other complications such as high blood pressure or pre-eclampsia. So that's the progression of high blood pressure with other outcomes as well. Managing your glucose levels well will reduce your risk of your baby being too big and therefore reduce the risk of birth complications, and also reduce the risk of baby having breathing difficulties after birth, and also reduce the risk that they might have a hypo or a low blood glucose level after birth because they've been taken out of an environment that is high in glucose and high in energy provision. Because of the risks involved for both mum and baby, you might be given a short time frame to use lifestyle management such as diet and exercise to check to see if you can manage your glucose levels within the recommended ranges. Usually if this is not being something that you can manage within the ranges, then you will be recommended to either start medication and or insulin. You can effectively manage your blood glucose levels depending on what you eat. First thing to note is that carbohydrates are still necessary. They're necessary for your body, for your brain, and also for baby's body and brain development. The key things to look out for when choosing carbohydrates are, number one, good quality carbohydrates. So these are your whole grain, high fiber options, the things that are going to be digested slowly so that your blood sugar levels rise and drop as slowly as possible. Number two, the quantity. So you will be provided with a specific target on how much carbohydrates across the day to be aiming for. This is from grains and other foods. And your aim is to spread it out throughout the day. So the third thing to keep in mind is timing. By effectively spreading out the right amounts throughout the day, you can think of your blood glucose levels being like a campfire. So think about this campfire being something that you want to keep burning steadily throughout the day by placing the right types and amounts of fuels in small amounts regularly, rather than too much at once and then none at other times, where you get a big flame or a big spike and then a drop or a low or a hypo. Outside carbohydrate-rich foods alone, things like protein, healthy fats, extra fiber, and also acids like vinegar or any salad dressings or lemon juice, for example, those things can also lower the glycemic response to whatever carbohydrates that you are having. Other than this, exercise also remains an effective way to manage your blood glucose levels. This is because exercise overrides the need for insulin to move glucose from the bloodstream into working muscles, where it is then used up for energy. The physical activity recommendations in pregnancy are similar to when you're not pregnant. So aiming for 30 minutes to 45 minutes of a moderate intensity activity on most days of the week is still going to be safe and beneficial for you and baby. The aim is to think about using anything that works for you to stay regular with your activity. So things like walking, swimming, or it could simply be cleaning your house to a bit of a faster pace with music on in the background. If you are struggling to manage your blood glucose levels effectively, you may be prescribed with medication or insulin to help bring down your blood glucose levels. Now, since both of these reduce your blood sugar levels, it is important to test your glucose levels when you are recommended to. Eating regularly with the right types and amounts of carbohydrates, as well as checking the levels around exercise to see if a snack may be required, will help you to reduce the risk of an extremely low blood sugar level or experiencing hypoglycemia. Now, this can sound like a lot, so having a supportive medical and healthcare team goes a long way. If you are struggling with knowing what to eat or need help with troubleshooting your blood sugar levels, book in an online consult with us. We'd love to go through an overview of where you're at and find the best way forward together.